Alrighty, folks, I hope you enjoyed reading that article. What I want you to do now is I want you to turn to your elbow partner and just discuss for about 2 minutes, 1 minute per person. What are two causes that you found while reading? And what are some effects of each cause? Again, what are two causes you found while reading? What are some effects of each cause? Sub, if you could pause this video for about 2 minutes to let them discuss, that'd be great. Fantastic. I hope everyone had a really good discussion. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to put all those causes and effects together and play a little game. We're going to see how we can get from American imperialism to more Filipino nurses via 6 degrees of separation. Let me explain how that works. So let's take a look at my whiteboard. So what we have at the very top is our first step, American imperialism. Now, using 6 degrees, right? If American imperialism is our first degree, our first step, how do we get to number 6, more Filipino nurses in the United States? What I want you to do is I want you and your elbow partner to take about 2 minutes to fill out steps 2, 3, 4, and 5. Again, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Fill out those steps. Explain how cause and effect helps us get from number 1, American imperialism, to number 6. Sub, if you could pause this video, give them about 2 minutes to get their steps in order. Fantastic. I hope you and your elbow partner got to work a little bit to ensure that you found your 4 steps. Now, here are my 6 degrees of separation. Yours does not have to be the same, and it's okay if yours is different. But a couple things. So I start off with American imperialism, right? America wants to expand overseas. We then get to the Philippine-American War, right? You could have also put the Spanish-American War. This allows for the United States to begin to gain territory elsewhere, right? Which leads to the fact that the Philippines gets annexed, right? The U.S. takes over, it establishes the Philippines as an American colony. This then leads to the 4th step. The 4th step is that there are nursing programs established in the Philippines to civilize, quote unquote, right? Civilize these Filipino savages, right? The Americans want to sort of educate the Filipinos, make them learn their American ways, not only through nursing, right, through establishing nursing schools, but establishing medical practices that mirror what Americans would do in the United States, right? So nursing programs get established, and now nurses are being trained in American ways of medicine. We then see a critical nursing shortage post-World War II, right? This then results in more Filipino nurses coming over to the US because they're already trained in American ways, right? Your 5th step could also be the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965. By lifting any quotas from countries for immigration, right? More countries are now able to send immigrants to the United States, and many immigrants choose to immigrate over to the US for a better life, which results in more Filipino nurses coming over to the US. You could also make the argument that the exchange visitor program should be the 5th step, right? The exchange visitor program was a program that was established to sort of combat Soviet Union propaganda, right? And in order for the Filipinos or the United States invites Filipino students to come over to sort of learn about American democracy, to learn about these methods of nursing, right, in the United States, to learn that the United States is so good, right, and is a positive force in the world. This then leads to more nurses that come over to the United States, right? So all of these things, all of these steps, going from 1 to 6, help explain how we get from American imperialism to that of more Filipino nurses, right? Again, it's totally okay, right? So for example, if you have different steps, right? If number 3, you have like the establishment of US nationals via the insular cases, that's totally fine, right? But be able to explain how you get from A to B, right? How you get from each step to each step as you sort of read the article. That'll be very helpful for you during the mini quiz. That concludes our chapter on Filipino immigrants. Again, that concludes our chapter on Filipino immigrants. We are now going to start our South Asian immigrants chapter. If you have questions about Filipino immigrants, please, please, please feel free to email me and ask, or Teams me and ask. Okay, so please make sure you email me if you have any questions before that quiz. Alrighty, we're now going to move on to talk a little bit about South Asians. South Asians. So over the course of our class, we've talked a little bit about East Asians, Japanese and Chinese immigrants. We've talked a little bit about Southeast Asians, Filipino immigrants. We're going to talk also about Vietnamese refugees after this chapter. But I want to then start talking a little bit about South Asian immigrants. South Asia largely comprised of Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal, but largely consists of India, right? One of the most populous nations in the world. And our big question in this chapter is, how is the South Asian immigration story different and similar to other East Asian ethnic groups? So again, how is the South Asian immigration story different and similar to other East Asian ethnic groups? That's going to be our big question. Some study questions for you. Again, this will all get posted, so don't worry about copying all of this down. And some key terms and some ideas. In this chapter, we're going to primarily focus on Sikh immigrants who end up coming over to the United States. Okay, so we're going to focus on Sikh immigrants. Okay, so why did South Asians immigrate to the United States? What I want you to do is I want you to turn to your elbow partner and just discuss for about 30 seconds. Why did South Asians immigrate to the United States? What was their main motivating goal? Take 30 seconds. Sub, if you could pause this video. All right, I hope you guys had a very fruitful discussion. Now, like I said, we're going to focus a little bit on the Sikhs during our lecture today, during this chapter. And during this time, right, the Great Britain ends up annexing most of the Punjab region of India in 1949, and eventually all of India in 1858. And as a result, many Indians lost their rights. For example, a sort of very strict segregation sort of system was followed, where those who were British were at the top, those who were Indian were at the bottom. Similarly, Indians lost their right to a fair trial, right? The British could sort of basically imprison anyone who they wanted to without needing to really try them, right? Without giving them any fair trial, right? You could also go to jail in India for sedition. So, for example, if you rebelled against the British annexation, right, you could be thrown in jail. Many people lost their right to free speech and to petition. Many people also lost their right to petition the government, right? Writing was limited. If you wrote anything scandalous about the British, you could be thrown into jail, right? So during this time, life was not very good for many Indians in India itself. Lots of individuals did not like how Great Britain was treating them. And so as a result, right, many of the Indians wanted to leave India. Now, the Sikhs in particular are a religious group found in the Punjab region of India. So that's the northeast corner right over here that borders Pakistan. So up in the Punjab region of California, or sorry, of India, not California, of India. And so many of them end up leaving India for better opportunities. Now, I just want to take a second to talk about the Sikhs as a whole. So Sikhism is monotheistic, right? There's one God. They believe that there's one God or one divine being. They have gurus, 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 right? Gurus who are spiritual teachers and guides. Many Sikhs advocate for equality, for humanity, for tolerance, and many of them serve the community. Many Sikhs really feel the need to help out those who are less fortunate. And so many Sikhs have, in the Bay Area, have actually founded many different food banks in order to help the Indian community and help those who are underprivileged or those who are poor. For those who don't know, Sikhs actually worship in a Gurdwara, or sort of a Sikh temple. It's a large, large temple. In fact, one of the largest ones is found in Evergreen. I used to live in Evergreen. Um, the Sikh Gurdwara was about a 2-minute drive from my house. Um, it's huge. It is very beautiful. If you have a chance to just sort of like look at one, it is amazing. The architecture is incredibly beautiful. I'd recommend that you go if you haven't had the chance. So one of the largest gurdwaras found in San Jose, in the foothills of Evergreen. So seriously recommend that. Now, one of the big things that's very sort of physically apparent about Sikhs is their turban. So if you look at this bottom photo here, as you can see that many Sikhs wear turbans that cover their head. Many Sikhs also do not cut their hair. Okay? They do not shave, right? So they sort of grow their hair out, right? This actually leads to a lot of discrimination, especially in the United States post 9/11, because many people sort of viewed Sikhs as related to terrorist groups like like Al Qaeda, right, and in 9/11. And so many of the Sikhs were discriminated against and even killed for sort of wearing a turban. They also sometimes will wear a steel bangle, and they also will wear like a small dagger to symbolize their fight against injustice. Right, their bangle sort of symbolizes oneness with God, and so these are some physical things that Sikhs would do in order, or that Sikhs sort of wear, or sort of like things that Sikhs would do in order to sort of be closer to their one God. Right. So just a couple fun facts. Now, in 1917, we see de jure discrimination already in place against those who are South Asian. Specifically, we see in 1917 the passage of the Asiatic Barred Zone Act. Again, the passage of the Asiatic Barred Zone Act. Now, if you take a look at this photo, the Asiatic Barred Zone Act basically said any part of the area in pink, if you are from there, no go. You could not come to the United States. So any area in pink, if you were from there, no go. You could not come to the United States. I want us to pause just for 30 seconds. And I want you to take a look at this map. What sort of countries are covered? Which sort of territory or country is not? Again, which territory is covered? Which territories are not? Go ahead and take 30 seconds and discuss. Sub, if you could just pause this video. Alrighty, so as you look at this map, right, you'll notice that some areas are covered and some areas are not. British India is largely covered. If you are Indian, right, you cannot come into the United States. You'll also notice that some parts of Southeast Asia, like Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, also covered by the Asiatic Barred Zone Act. Those folks, not allowed either. But you will notice that there is one country in particular, or one modern day country we know now, that is not covered, and that is the Philippines, right? That's the Philippines. The reason for this is because the Philippines at this point is already an American territory, right? Those Filipinos are US nationals. You'll also notice that Japan is not covered. That's because of a 1907 gentleman's agreement, right? The gentleman's agreement allows for the Japanese to come to the United States, but they self-limit their immigration. In return, the United States does not pass any laws that exclude them. Now, speaking of exclusion, the Asiatic Barred Zone Act of 1917 should remind us of another very similar act or very similar law. I want you to take 30 seconds. Which law does this remind us of? What other piece of legislation does the Asiatic Barred Zone Act remind us of? Go ahead and take 30 seconds and discuss. Sub, if you could pause this video. If your answer was the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, bingo, you've got it, right? Similar to the Chinese Exclusion Act, the Asiatic Barred Zone Act basically takes a whole group of immigrants and says, nope, you cannot come to the United States. So it effectively excludes ethnic groups, even though it may not exclude a specific group in the region shaded in pink. But for those Sikhs who came over before 1917, they were able to sort of set up shop in the United States. So, what was life like for them? Well, mostly men came to the who are Sikh came to the United States. We see a lot of men coming over, not a lot of women. At the end of the day, many of the men who came over prior to the Asiatic Bar Zone Act didn't take their wives. They thought that they would be able to go back and forth between these two countries. But unfortunately for them, after the Asiatic Bar Zone Act, many of the men ended up staying in the United States and did not bring their wives over. They started new lives here. And for those bachelors, for those single men, right, they ended up marrying a different ethnic group, Mexican women, that we'll talk a little bit about later in our chapter on South Asians. Now, many of those Sikh men ended up coming to the Pacific Northwest, where they worked in this lower photo down over here, in the lumber yards, where they worked in the lumber yards. Many of them also came in California and settled in the Central Valley. So that's sort of like our little San Joaquin Valley. If you drive, keep on driving past Pleasanton and into San Joaquin County, and that stretches all the way down to Bakersfield. You'll actually see still large groups of Sikh communities in Fresno, in Clovis, in Merced, right? In these sort of cities that are lining up our valleys, our Central Valley in California. Many of those Sikh immigrants were also processed through Angel Island in San Francisco. We're going to learn about one of those immigrants, Vaishno Das Bagai. He is a very famous immigrant, a South Asian immigrant who comes through Angel Island and tries to establish a new life for himself in the Bay Area, but unfortunately is very unsuccessful. So we're going to learn about him in just a second. As I said, many of them worked as farmers in the lumber industry and as farmers themselves, right? They followed Mexican workers moving where the crops were. In fact, let's take a listen to one of the sections of a Takaki text, right, where he writes, quote, like the Mexican laborers, the Sikhs followed the harvesting of the different crops. The turbaned, again, physical characteristic, physical difference here, the turbaned workers were continually on the wing, reported Annette Thackwell Johnson for the Independent magazine in 1922, coming from the melon and cotton fields in the Imperial Valley, en route to the fig orchards and vineyards of Fresno, or the rice fields near Sacramento. Farm work was one of constant movement. During the grape picking season, great numbers of them were in Fresno County, a Stockton lawyer said. At the time of rice harvesting, there will be 1,000 of them near Willows, and during the cotton season in the Imperial Valley. This being when the weather is very hot, they go to that place for work. The workday was long, and the work back-breaking. We got up 3:30. 3:30, that's 3 a.m., said a Sikh. And before the first faint daylight was visible, we were ready for work. Periodically, the boss, an American foreman, would come up into the fields and yell, hurry up, hurry up. So again, we see this sort of constant exploitation of workers, right? Sikh men working for long, long, long hours, very similar to the cicadas, who are Filipino, very similar to the Japanese workers in the sugar plantations, very similar. The Jewish and Irish workers working as seamstresses, right? Begin to see where these things begin to line up and connect. So I want you to predict, what types of discrimination do you think the Sikhs faced? Now, to sort of prime you with this, take a look at this article here, right? How are they referring to those who are Sikh? How are they referring to those who are Sikh? Go ahead and take 30 seconds and discuss with your elbow partner, what types of discrimination do you think the Sikhs faced? Sub, if you could pause this video for 30 seconds. I hope everyone had a very good discussion. I want to draw your attention to two sort of lines. The first line, the dusky peril. Dusky, sort of dark-skinned, dirty, right? Unclean, right? The dusky peril, this sort of thing that will come to haunt us, right? This brown, dark being that comes to haunt us. But more importantly, I want to draw your attention to a line right under it. It says, quote, Hindu hordes invading the state. Hindu hordes invading the state. Sort of ironic, because these men, they're not Hindu, they're Sikh. That's a totally different religion. Hindus are polytheistic, they believe in many different gods. Sikhs, on the other hand, are monotheistic. Leave it to America to not even get their racism correct, right? So at the end of the day, many Sikh men face both social discrimination and de jure discrimination. We're going to talk a little bit about de jure discrimination. So first, we see anti-miscegenation laws come into play, right? Again, anti-miscegenation laws, laws that banned interracial marriage. We also see the Alien Land Act of 1913. At the end of the day, the Alien Land Act didn't just apply to Japanese immigrants. It also applied to South Asian ones as well. So in 1913, the Alien Land Act, right, barred those who were Sikh from being able to own land. Now, we'll talk a little bit about a loophole in which the Sikh used. But what you need to understand is that at the end of the day, the Sikh could not own land at all. Last, we have another Supreme Court case, US versus Thind. Now, here's the thing. Let me lay the groundwork for you, right? So US versus Thind was decided in 1923, 10 years after the Alien Land Act of 1913. Now, to lay the groundwork, here's what sort of happens, right? So Bhagat Singh Thind is a South Asian immigrant that comes over to the United States in 1913 to attend college. He actually goes and fights in World War I in the US Army, and he eventually rises the ranks and becomes a sergeant. Initially, he was granted US citizenship, but he later gets that denied. Now, his argument was that those who are Indian, those who are South Asian, right, those who are from India, are descendant from those from the Caucasus Mountains, right? They too are Aryans. They are Aryans, they are white. Hang on, folks, I do not know what happened there, but give me 1 second. Cool, I believe we are back on track. So, like I said, at the end of the day, his argument is very specific. His argument is, since I am Indian, I am descendant from those in the Caucasus Mountains. I'm actually Aryan. I'm Aryan. So therefore, I am white and eligible, or I'm Caucasian, right? And therefore eligible for citizenship, right? Let's listen to this quick little video and let's see how the US Supreme Court decides this case. Let's see how the US Supreme Court decides this case. Let's take a listen.
The next case that comes 3 months later is US versus Thind, and he is from India. He even serves for the US military. He says, he takes a look at the Ozawa case and he says, well, I've learned something. I'm claiming my Caucasianness. And at the time, the racial sciences at the time were saying, oh, this is the Caucasian race, and it goes all the way down, to India, right? So in that sense, he's correct by the terms of science at that time. So he says, I'm Caucasian, therefore I'm white. The Supreme Court turns around and says, I think that the everyday, white American would be very surprised to think that somebody like Thind is considered white. You may be Caucasian, but you are not white. And so they start to define whiteness by what the everyday white person thinks whiteness is. And this is the early 1920s. I think this says a lot for the power of everyday people looking around, looking at phenotype and making decisions based on that. And the Supreme Court, in some regard, kind of cleans its hands and says, you know, it's up to the majority population to decide.
What I want you to do now is I want you to take 30 seconds, turn to your elbow partner and discuss how does the Supreme Court rule in this case? What is their reasoning as to why they rule the way that they do? What is their reasoning? Go ahead and take 30 seconds to discuss what is the reasoning the Supreme Court uses here. Sub, if you could pause this video for 30 seconds. Fantastic, right? Hope you guys had a good discussion. At the end of the day, remember that this case is slightly different from Ozawa. In Ozawa, the Supreme Court holds that only those who are Caucasian can be citizens, right? Since Ozawa was Japanese and not Caucasian, no citizenship. This is a little different, right? Thind says he is Caucasian. I am descendant from those who are Caucasian, therefore I am Caucasian. And the Supreme Court says, well, what we really mean by Caucasian is that you look white and that most people in the United States view you and would consider you a Caucasian. Since you have dark skin, you, even though you are technically Caucasian, via the sciences and the pseudoscience at the time, right, technically Caucasian, you are still not white, and therefore we can still deny you citizenship. Right? So think about how de jure discrimination ends up affecting immigrants in the United States. All right, we're going to stop there for today. What I do want you to do, if you have any remaining time left, is I want you to go ahead and start studying for our Japanese and Filipino immigrants mini quiz. Again, if you have any time left, go ahead and start studying for the Japanese, Filipino immigrants mini quiz. I will see some of y'all on Wednesday, where we will take our quiz. Odd periods, I will send you another lecture very soon to watch on Tuesday. All these lectures will be posted onto Canvas so that people have access to them. Have a great day, y'all.